We are gathered here on this 65th anniversary of the 1960 Rising. It is important to remind ourselves that we are part of a tradition of revolution. From the heroism of the men and women who took part in the 1960 Rising to the brave sacrifices made by the hunger strikers 20 years ago. This unbroken tradition carries us forward, inspiring and instilling in us the spirit of the many men and women who have been and are part of our struggle. Young people have always been at the forefront of this struggle. Whether it was posting proclamations around the city or risking their lives to unload arms with hope, young people were untiring in their dedication to bring about change. Today, young people's role in our struggle is as vital as ever. Over Sinn Féin campaigns on issues such as drugs, travellers' rights, demilitarisation, the Irish language, and all issues that affect us. Although the way in which we struggle may have changed, being active in bringing about our objective, a British withdrawal, is important as ever. We urge young people to join Over Sinn Féin so you too can be a part of the struggle for Irish freedom. If we move together as one, we can ensure that our day will come. Chuck for our law for Margaret.
It's an honour to be asked to come here and speak. When I was asked to come, I had reservations, simply because I find it very difficult to speak, certainly find it very difficult to speak about the 81 hunger strike. And there is a direct connection between our comrades who died on hunger strike and the 1916 Rising, this being the 85th anniversary. And the direct reference in that in 1916, the Brits tried to demoralise our people, tried to quash the resistance by brutally murdering our comrades in jail. In 1981, they tried the same tactics to try to criminalise the struggle and defeat the prisoners. Now, this being the 20th anniversary, speaking to other blanket men and former hunger strikers, they have the same feelings that I and emotions that I had. It's very, very hard to talk about it. This is the first year, and it's 20 years ago, but it seems like yesterday to me. It's very hard to talk about it, and if the feelings run right across the board with the former blanket men and hunger strikers that I talked to. But the stimulus that made me speak about it was that we need to tell the story as it was. We need to tell the facts. We can't afford to let other people write our history for us. We were there, we endured it, and we should be telling our story. And it's very important. And I'm just sorry that I never opened up years ago, but it also has benefited me. The 1981 hunger strike wasn't just about jail conditions. The 1981 hunger strike unfolded as part of a British strategy. And it's important to bear this in mind, that the people who were mainly behind implementing this strategy was a British Labour Party, who are in power today. Now, if you go back to, as I said, I was interned, and in 1974, while we were in the cages along Case, they were building the H blocks. They were building the H blocks as part of a strategy to criminalise the struggle and defeat the prisoners. See, the strength and resolve of the prisoners to resist that was unbelievable. But it marks for me, it marks for us, the strength that is there. Because the prisoners seen how important it was not to allow ourselves to be criminalised. Now, an incident that happened in the cages when I was interned was that Merlin Rees, who later became British Secretary of State for 6 counties and also British Home Secretary, and Kevin McNamara walked around the cages along Case with me and told me in 1974 that if they were in power, they would end internment the next day. not only did they not end employment, but they went cement and building H blocks at that period, and they had that strategy unfolding, and they used a British scientist called Roy Mason to really implement that. Now Roy Mason to this day still has 2 bodyguards working 24 hours a day. That's a legacy of the failure of that criminalisation policy. It's also very important to realise the duplicity of the Brits, and that's an example. Other examples are that after the first hunger strike, when we thought that we had assurances that we would be able to achieve our 5 demands, the Brits reneged once more. And that led to the second hunger strike. The second hunger strike, and as I say, it's very hard to speak about. I've lost some very good comrades, some very personal people who I would have been on active service with in inside jail and outside of jail. And it was a very hard period. But we've come through that period. 1981 has politicised the movement and has led to what we have today as a vibrant, open movement throughout the length and breadth of Ireland. And after the hunger strike, not only did we achieve the status that we were after, but through the Good Friday Agreement, we had that public acknowledgement through us being released. I was released on the Good Friday Agreement. A public acknowledgement that the struggle is political. And nothing could be more clear throughout the world that our struggle is political. But keep this in mind, while the Brits have done all that, they're still trying to defeat us. They're still trying to defeat the struggle. And always bear that in mind, and always bear in mind the duplicity. Now our people have come through 32 years of struggle. We have learned through the duplicity in the past, and we are in negotiations at present. And with that experience behind us, we will come through what we have to come through. And people have to remember that this is just another phase of struggle. Because we are travelling the length and breadth of the country doing meetings and discussions on the legacy of the 1881 hunger strike. And I think it's very important for everybody here, if they can't attend meetings that are advertised, to go to them. Because you will get a good insight into the people who were involved, blanket men and former hunger strikers. It will be very interesting for everybody to listen to those discussions. So I'd encourage everybody to go there. I would also encourage everybody to attend the mass demonstration in Casement Park on the 6th of May. Now, I just want to say one other thing which is very important. It's very important to me because I feel it very personal. While I've been travelling about doing discussions, a lot of times people ask me a question of was it all worth it? I've spent nearly 22 years in jail. And the honest answer that I give to people, and the honest answer that I'm telling you people today, is that I can't answer that question because history will tell that. And the reason why I can't answer that question is because it's phrased in the past tense. It's phrased in the past tense, and was it all worth it? It's not over yet. The struggle continues, and the struggle won't be over until the British are out of Ireland. Just one final thing, but just a reminder to people that we still have prisoners in jail. We still have prisoners in Ireland and abroad. And remember them and their families at this time as well as the dead. Go to me and my love. I'd now like to call for the Easter message from the leadership of Old Glasnevin to be read out.
The leadership of Old Glasnevin extends fraternal greetings to Republican activists, supporters and friends at home and abroad. We reaffirm our belief that the British government's claim to a part of Ireland, its denial of self-determination to the people of the island of Ireland, the partition of our country and the maintenance of social and economic inequality are the root causes of conflict. We reaffirm our commitment to the national reunification of Ireland. On this, the 85th anniversary of the Easter Rising, we remember all of those who have given their lives in the cause of Irish freedom. We salute the courage and fortitude of our volunteers who have died in this phase of our historic struggle. This year also marks the 20th anniversary of our 10 comrades who died in hunger strike in Long Kesh. We remember Bobby Sands, Francis Hughes, Raymond McCreesh, Patsy O'Hara, Joe MacDonald, Martin Hurston, Kevin Lynch, Kieran Doherty, Thomas McElroy and Michael Devine. By their courageous actions and sacrifice, they smashed the British government's attempt to criminalise our struggle for freedom. We also remember Michael Gohan and Frank Stagg. This generation of Republicans hold all of those who died in hunger strike in the same regard as previous generations held the men executed in 1916. We extend solidarity to their families and the families of all our fallen comrades. We also extend our solidarity to our imprisoned comrades at home and abroad and to their families. Many of our comrades have now been released under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement. The Republican prisoners held in Clery should also be released. Since 1994, the IRA has maintained cessations of military operations. While not being party to the Good Friday Agreement, we have taken a number of unprecedented initiatives which further demonstrate our commitment to the desire for permanent peace in Ireland. We commend the resolve and discipline of our volunteers in this period. The political responsibility for ending the current crisis lies with the British government. There should be no attempt to renegotiate commitments previously made. Those who seek to defeat the IRA and Irish republicanism will not prevail. Óglaigh Nahearn remains committed to the achievement of our republican objectives and the vision of an Irish Republic as outlined in the Proclamation of 1916. Fergie Bua.
So Margaret, the next speaker is a man who's imprisoned both in Ireland, in Britain and in Europe. He's on hunger strike, he's forced out by the British authorities. But since being released from jail, he's been to the forefront of Sinn Féin's peace strategy. So I'd like us to put your hands together to welcome Gerry from Belfast. You see that bit of blue sky over there just disappearing in Rebecca? That followed me the whole way down from Belfast. And then that zip from Belfast down at Fox School. It's not the first time we've been rained on. As I'm more does Chalkin Sean you have a snorch public to me by the clear. Come a Gilligan Shaw almost a horch. Near one the lake area Machna Casca. After the lake and the stock offers for Murray. Now Jeremy Starmer, Gerby, Shaw Blaine, Tiffany Khan, na Stockery Acres, Octo Hen. Ox a neighbour to Rinshade, Honirati, Miltus Maggie Thatcher of Rishi. Ox the touch point on Doran Moore, so Kimmy Coggy eat here. The even the Stockery Hitchblock, Eisner Foot and Tail, Ox cover Maggie Thatcher and you. Easter week 1916 was one of the greatest historical events in the last century. It started a bushfire which was to engulf the British Empire. It inspired generations of Irish Republicans and also people throughout the world who rose up against the tyranny of colonial rule, imperialism and oppression. 20 years ago, another historical event took place. The 1981 hunger strike was the 1916 of our generation. Both events signaled massive political change. Why? Why did people in their thousands join the Republican struggle after 1916? Why tens of thousands more? Why did they vote for Sinn Féin in 1918? Why did more and more people become actively Republican after the 1981 hunger strike? Why did more and more people in their thousands vote for Sinn Féin North and South? Because people recognised the courage of a small number of men and women prepared to give their lives in a David and Goliath battle for justice. It stripped away the propaganda. It stripped away historical revisionists. It stripped away generations of state censorship and it laid bare very simple truths. It asked straightforward questions of individuals throughout Ireland who witnessed those deaths. Why would any person risk death for someone else? What exactly is their cause? Is it my cause? Has government and the media been telling me lies?
People like Bernard Fox, who spoke earlier, who took part in the 1981 hunger strike, radicalised a generation of Irish people 20 years ago, and his involvement today, and those who were with him, continues to inspire young people. So he doesn't get embarrassed about that. Let us also remember that all those who died in hunger strike in 81, or who were executed in 1916, were volunteers, revolutionary soldiers in Irish Republican armies. So for the generations, or for this generation coming up now, who did not live through those events, it is important to know that these were men and women who gave their lives for this generation and the generations still to come. They were ordinary men and women born into extraordinary circumstances, and they rose to the challenge again and again every time it was demanded of them. They were proud volunteers in a revolutionary army, and let their lives and deaths be testimony that volunteers of today are as good, if not better, than any generation of freedom fighters ever produced in Ireland or anyone else. They, along with many other political activists, have not only reclaimed Irish history back from the revisionists, they have worked actively and relentlessly for the very reasonable objectives of a united Ireland, which can deliver the national democracy and equality which should be every man and woman's birthright. They came and come from the crowd standing here today. They came from this surrounding city and the countryside of Ireland. Now I'm here to pay tribute to fallen comrades. But let me make it clear, let me be crystal clear. I don't pretend or presume to know what their thoughts or attitudes would be on the present situation, or indeed any of the developments in our struggle over the last number of years. I make only this claim with certitude. The objectives for which they gave their lives remains the objectives we as Republicans will continue to struggle for until we are successful. Until the British Army in its entirety leaves Ireland and we achieve an end to partition and an establishment of 32-county Irish Republic, the struggle goes on. You'll be glad to hear I'm going to try and not give a long analysis of where we are at now. I am, however, going to state a few facts that I think are important. The Good Friday Agreement, which was signed in 1988, is not a Republican document. It was a compromise contract signed between opposing political parties. It didn't resolve all the issues. It wasn't meant to. It was a structural route map which we believe can advance our struggle. Not only did all the pro-agreement parties sign up to it, so did over 80% of the whole electorate of Ireland. The present situation is not complicated. Some 3 years on since that contract was signed and agreed, only the Assembly, the institution favoured by the Unionists, is working without interference. Unionism is still trying to refuse to allow Republicans and Nationalists access to the All-Ireland institutions. David Trimble has attempted to introduce a precondition that the IRA should agree to surrender arms before Sinn Féin can participate in the All-Ireland Ministerial Council. That's not part of the Good Friday Agreement. Unionism in the British, this is unionism in the British government reneging on the agreement. What David Trimble is doing is not just illegal, it is undemocratic, it is unjust, and it is discrimination as per 1969 against Republican voters. The All-Ireland institutions remain flat. A political vacuum created by David Trimble and by his unwillingness to move is deepening. That political vacuum, the reality of that political vacuum, is being filled by loyalist violence. The reality and result of the Unionist intransigence is that there have been daily attacks on Catholics. It means that Catholics are being burned and burned out of their homes in North Belfast. It means that loyalists are attempting sectarian and bigoted purges of Catholics from Antrim, from Larne, from Randallstown, from Ballymoney, and many other places. Is it any wonder that nationalists are tired, angry and frustrated with the way things are at present? Sinn Féin has been working tirelessly to make the peace process work. However, there are a number of serious and deepening crises which have engulfed the peace process. In May of last year, after an intensive round of negotiations, the British government and the IRA made a deal. The British government promised, among other things, to deliver on a new beginning to policing, to demilitarise our war machine, and to implement the Good Friday Agreement signed 3 years earlier. The British government's failure to deliver on these commitments has created the current crisis and led to intensive talks which took place earlier this year. These talks ended last month without substantial movement and without closing the gaps on the main issues of policing, demilitarisation and the permanency of institutions. Issues which can only be resolved by the British government. The only player who made a move for the good of the peace process was the IRA. The IRA unilaterally decided, not for the first time, in a genuine bid to create political space to engage with the International Independent Commission and Decommissioning. This move once again showed that the IRA is honouring its commitments. Others must follow this lead and honour their commitments and their obligations under the Good Friday Agreement. The onus is on the British government. They know what needs to be done. Republicans have honoured every commitment made under the Good Friday Agreement, and we now demand that others do likewise. Republicanism is going from strength to strength. We owe that to our current political strategy, to the hard and dedicated work of all our party members, and to the increasing number of voters who are looking to Sinn Féin, to Republicans, to provide an effective and radical Republican voice. General elections and local government elections in the 6 counties in June will provide an opportunity to build on this. Our objective is to become the largest party in the 6 counties. If we apply ourselves, work hard, I am convinced that we will make the important gains and advance towards that objective. And as we move closer to the elections in the 26 counties, I am confident that our poll-tapping TD, Stephen O'Quillan, will repeat his success and will be joined by other Sinn Féin TDs in Leinster House, such as Mickey Pugh TD, Sean Crow TD, and God lover Des Ellis TD. There has been a failure of successive administrations in this state to fulfil the aim of the 1916 Proclamation and the democratic programme of the First Dáil Éireann, which declared the right of every citizen to an adequate share of the produce of the nation's labour. Instead of sharing the wealth, successive governments have rewarded most those who need help least, and left those in greatest need waiting in line. And where do our people wait? They languish in local authority housing waiting lists, or they struggle with huge mortgages. They also wait months and years for hospital treatment. No longer must we have the shameful spectacle of wealth buying instant access to vital care, while others in need deteriorate on waiting lists. Access must be based on need, not on ability to pay, and health care must be free to all who need it. When we witness the succession of revelations of corruption from Dublin Castle, it shows us how far from the idealism and self-sacrifice of the hunger strikers were so many of the men and women who administered this state in the past 2 decades. There is now a hunger for real change in the political life of Ireland. Who will provide it? Not Fine Gael, as their new leader Michael Noonan competes with Fianna Fáil to see who has the least number of brown envelopes and unreturned cheques in their party safes. Not the Labour Party under Rudy Quinn, who seems to be more preoccupied with the growth of Sinn Féin, especially here in Dublin. The reality is that Sinn Féin is at the cutting edge of political change in Ireland. We are the only political organisation which is growing significantly in the whole country. We are the only All-Ireland party. The presence of a strong Republican team is badly needed in Leinster House, not least to confront the poor leadership shown by successive governments and the so-called opposition parties. In the coming weeks and months, the people of the 26 counties are going to be pressurised into agreeing to the Treaty of Nice by way of referendum. The Treaty of Nice is detrimental to Ireland's interests, let's be clear. It will undermine Irish sovereignty, politically and economically, and bring us closer into a European military alliance. With every day that passes, the Irish government is marching us into a European army and further away from neutrality. Sinn Féin is vigorously campaigning for a no vote in the referendum. And one of the most encouraging aspects of this phase, and you can see it here today, of our struggle has been the numbers of young people attracted to our party. We are the only political party which is experiencing such growth. This party can be a vehicle for change for a new generation. And we must listen carefully to our youth. We must have dialogue Because if there is a way to see the shape of the future, it is to talk to the generation that will lead this struggle after us. What is required is a transformation of our society. Those who wrote the 1916 Proclamation understood that. They had a vision in which we cherish all of the children of the nation equally, and which respects the diversity of our people. Republicans are at the cutting edge of seeking this transformation, of creating a better future for all. Let me return to the subject of our fallen comrades. I would like to give our support and thoughts of everyone here today to their families. It may seem a long time since they died, and even listening to Bernard when he was talking, you know, it's a generation ago. Sometimes that's hard to understand. There's a lot of people here who weren't even born at the hunger strikes, never mind the 1916 rising. So sometimes it seems quite distant. So it may seem a long time since they died, but to their families and loved ones, we know it could have happened yesterday. An important part of gathering in their memory is to let their loved ones know that our thoughts are with them also. I have concentrated on the men and women of 1916 and 1981. I do so because almost everyone in Ireland can identify with those periods, those historical events. But there are many others in the IRA and Sinn Féin who died so that we could achieve our goal. Unknown soldiers and political activists in every generation who struggled on and sacrificed themselves in mean times and in unpopular times. They kept the flame lit no matter what, and we owe a great debt of gratitude to them. I would also like to send our solidarity to the POWs still incarcerated and to their families. A special mention, I think, needs to be made of the Castlereagh political prisoners. They are an integral part of our struggle, and they should be released immediately to return to their loved ones and play our part in the unfolding situation. We are Irish Republicans. Our vision of a united Ireland is stronger than ever and more achievable than ever. Those who have died over the years did so looking to the future. We rededicate ourselves as we step confidently towards the goal for which they fought and died. Bígí Kincha, go jockey our laugh for the world. Another Gerry. I'd like to pick up on a point there that Gerry was just finishing off on. This struggle isn't over. There's a role for everybody to play. Sinn Féin is growing, but it can grow a lot faster if more and more people join it. And there's people here who haven't joined yet, and I'd encourage them to do so. There's 2 Republican bands here based in Dublin who are also growing. And I'd like us to put your hand together to thank them. There's a Hill here, based in drum band, and a Smith Hartford Saturday band. I'd also like to say thank you to the Colour Party who led us up from the GPO to the graveyard here. And to thank our elected councillors and our candidates who led with the banner, which makes the connection between 1916, 81 and today and the future. Of 1916, 1981, 2001, Arroy Concessia, ag sin gadir catal mid denaf, ag struck at the right, gadig around with a public social truckadol kunde ernach. So the shin are Willem, Clery, Donna, Smith, Harper, Darby, from Alan the Vein of Hannah. So my friendship, Kieran, if I couple of all made Anna, from Margaret.